Welcome back to Britology. Today we're diving into one of the most iconic landmarks in the entire United Kingdom, a place where stone walls whisper tales of power, betrayal, survival, and execution, the Tower of London. Most people think of it as a dark and gloomy prison where famous figures met their tragic end, but the story of the tower stretches much further and is filled with secrets, surprising transformations, and forgotten details that shaped the course of British history. This is the untold history of the Tower of London. The Tower of London began its story in 1066, the year William the Conqueror won the Battle of Hastings and claimed the English crown. To secure his hold over a restless population, William knew he needed something more than soldiers. He needed a symbol of Norman power. So he ordered the construction of a massive fortress in the heart of London. The first part of the structure, what we now call the White Tower, rose above the city as a stark reminder that the Normans were in charge. At the time, its size and strength were unlike anything England had ever seen. It wasn't just a building, it was a message. Over the centuries, kings and queens expanded and modified the tower, turning it into a sprawling complex of walls, gates, and smaller towers. But it wasn't simply a military stronghold. The tower became a royal palace, a treasury, an armory, and even a menagerie where exotic animals like lions, elephants, and polar bears were kept as symbols of royal prestige. In fact, the polar bear, a gift from the King of Norway in the 13th century, was supposedly allowed to fish in the River Thames, tethered by a chain so it could swim and catch food. These unusual touches made the tower not just a fortress of fear, but also a stage for royal display. Of course, the tower is most famously remembered as a prison, but its role as a jail was actually secondary for much of its history, only high status. Prisoners were kept here, those whose fates were tied directly to the crown. The tower wasn't a place for common criminals. It was reserved for nobles, political enemies, and sometimes even members of the royal family themselves. Being imprisoned here wasn't always a death sentence either. Some captives lived relatively comfortably, depending on their wealth and connections. Still, the tower's reputation as a place of terror was solidified through some of the most dramatic events in English history. One of the darkest chapters came during the Wars of the Roses, when rival factions of the English nobility fought for control of the throne. The tower played a central role in this brutal conflict. It was here that the infamous princes in the tower, Edward the Fair and his younger brother, Richard, were held after their uncle, Richard, Duke of Gloucester, declared himself king. The two boys disappeared, never to be seen again, and suspicions of murder have haunted the tower's reputation ever since. Their fate remains one of history's most enduring mysteries. Executions at the tower are another part of its grim legacy. Contrary to popular belief, not many people were executed within the tower walls. Most condemned prisoners were taken to nearby Tower Hill for public beheadings, a spectacle meant to serve as a warning to the people. However, some high-profile executions did take place inside the tower itself, away from the crowds. Among the most famous were Anne Boleyn, the second wife of Henry VIII, and Catherine Howard, his fifth wife, both of whom were accused of treason. Anne Boleyn's execution in 1536 was particularly dramatic. She was granted the unusual mercy of being beheaded by a skilled French swordsman rather than the traditional English axe. Her body was buried in an unmarked grave within the tower's chapel, and it's said her ghost still wanders the grounds. But the tower's history isn't all death and despair. It also guarded some of the most precious treasures of the realm. The crown jewels, symbols of royal authority, have been housed in the tower for centuries. The collection includes some of the most famous diamonds in the world, like the Cullinan Y set into the sovereign's scepter, and the Koh-i-Noor, which has a long and controversial history of its own. Protecting these treasures has always been a top priority, and over the years there have been several daring but unsuccessful attempts to steal them. The most famous was in 1671, when Colonel Thomas Blood, disguised as a clergyman, tried to make off with the jewels. He was caught, but surprisingly, King Charles II not only pardoned him but granted him land in Ireland. Why the king spared him remains a mystery, adding yet another layer to the tower's strange history. The tower also played a role as a military stronghold well into modern times. During the World Wars, it was once again used to hold prisoners, including spies captured on British soil. In fact, the last execution at the tower was in 1941, when German spy Joseph Jacobs was shot by firing squad. That means the tower's role as a place of death stretched nearly 900 years, from the medieval era into the 20th century. Then there are the legends and ghost stories that continue to capture imaginations. Beyond Anne Boleyn, there are tales of Lady Jane Grey, the young queen who ruled for only 9 days before being imprisoned and executed. Her ghost is said to haunt the tower's battlements. The cries of the princes are rumored to echo through the bloody tower, where they were last seen. Even the ravens that live at the tower are part of its mythology. According to legend, if the ravens ever leave, the kingdom will fall. To this day, their wings are clipped to ensure they stay, and they have official keepers to watch over them. Perhaps what makes the Tower of London so fascinating is the way it has constantly reinvented itself. From fortress to palace, prison to treasury, and now one of the world's most visited heritage sites, it has survived centuries of change and turmoil. It is a place where the most powerful figures in history made decisions that shaped the future, but also where the vulnerable and defeated faced their final days. The tower holds stories of ambition and downfall, of glory and despair, all layered into its ancient stone walls. Today, millions of visitors walk through its gates every year, marveling at the crown jewels, listening to the yeoman warders, better known as beefeaters, and imagining the lives of those who once looked out from behind its bars. The Tower of London is not just a monument, it is a living archive of British history, a place where myth and reality intertwine, and where the echoes of the past can still be felt in every corner. So next time you see its unmistakable silhouette on the banks of the Thames, remember that the tower isn't just a relic of medieval England. It's a survivor of conquests, rebellions, royal dramas, and world wars. It's a building that has stood for nearly 1,000 years, holding secrets that still haven't been fully uncovered. And in many ways, that's what makes it so endlessly captivating. Thank you for watching Britology, where we uncover the hidden stories of Britain's past. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into the history that shaped this nation. Until next time, keep exploring the stories that history tried to keep hidden.